Hello everyone. In last video I told you about ECG, I told you about cardiac cycle, I showed you one animation. Now let us talk about few details of cardiac cycle and ECG which I was not able to tell you in the previous videos. So first let us look into the stroke volume, right? Stroke volume, cardiac output and heart sounds. These are the three topics first which we are going to discuss. Now remember that I told you that our body always maintains homeostasis, right? Our body always maintains the amount of blood which is flowing on in your body. Just like that, the amount of blood which flows out through your heart every minute or every beat is also regulated. Right, what did I say? That the amount of blood which is pumped by your heart is also very regulated. Now what is that volume? So please write down that the amount of blood or the volume of blood which is pumped by one of the ventricles, right, which is pumped by each of the ventricles and not combining the two. Please remember, we are not talking about the combined volume of blood which is pumped by both the ventricles. Now as you know, after the cardiac cycle, that both the ventricles, they pump blood simultaneously. Both of them contract and push the blood together into aorta and your pulmonary artery, right? But when we are talking about stroke volume or cardiac output, we are always concerned with the blood pumped by either of the ventricles, by one of the ventricles, right? And not the volume combining both of the ventricles, right? So please write down what is stroke volume, the amount of blood or the volume of blood which is pumped by your heart in one beat or one cardiac cycle, right? Now you are, you will write a bit more nice definition as you have studied cardiac cycle. So please write down that stroke volume is the amount or volume of blood pumped by one of the ventricles, either of the ventricles in one cardiac cycle, right? In one cardiac cycle. Okay, chaliye. So what is stroke volume? Okay, so that is around 70 milliliter. Right, that is around 70 milliliter. Now since it is around 70 milliliter and now you know that our pacemaker, what is the pacemaker of heart? Yes, that is SA node. And what is the normal average heart rate of a human by the pacemaker? That is 72 beats per minute, right? So if in one beat there one ventricle pumps out 70 ml of blood, what will be the volume pumped out by the heart in 1 minute? So you will multiply it by the number of times the heart beats or the number of cardiac cycles in 1 minute, and now you know that the number of cardiac cycles in 1 minute is equal to 72. Our heart beats 72 times, right? So when we multiply 70 with 72, what do we get? We get 5040 ml, right, which we can approximate to 5.04 liters या फिर इसको हम लोग simply 5 liter भी बोल देते हैं, ठीक है? So we got two things from here. First is cardiac output and the stroke volume. First we know that the stroke volume. What is stroke volume? The amount of blood pumped by one of the ventricles in one cardiac cycle is stroke volume. And what is the measure of stroke volume? That is 70 milliliter, right? When we consider the same stroke volume in cardiac output, right, in 1 minute, 1 minute में कितना heart blood pump करता है, तो we will what do we do? We multiply the stroke volume with our heart rate. That means that many times the heart is beating in 1 minute, right? So that comes out to be approximately 5 liters, and you have to remember the value of both of these, right, and how to calculate it. If it comes in exam, please show the formula and please show how you have calculated it, right? Now let us move on to heart sounds. And हम लोग बार बार बोलते हैं हार्ट बीट कर रहा है. Even you must have went to a doctor. I am sure that all of you must have had your heart sounds checked up by a doctor, है ना, by a stethoscope. So what is those heart sounds? What are these heart sounds made up of? So when I told you about cardiac cycle, I told you that first when the ventricles contract, these ventricles, first let us start with atria, right? When the atria contract, the blood is sent on to ventricles, right? Now these ventricles will contract and try to send the blood into aorta and pulmonary veins. Now when these ventricle contracts, what will happen? Blood will try to flow back from the ventricles into the atrium, right? Now you know this. Now when these try to flow back to the atrium, what happens? Your tricuspid and bicuspid valves close, right? Due to that increasing pressure, your tricuspid and bicuspid valves close, which lead to your first heart sound, that is lub, right? Which leads to your first heart sound, that is lub. Okay, that is lub. So what is lub? Please write down. Lub is the first heart sound. First heart sound. Lub is the first heart sound, and what it is made up of? It is due to the closure of, please remember, it is not due to the opening but due to the closure of your tricuspid and bicuspid valves, right? It is due to the closure of your tricuspid and bicuspid valves. Okay, it is due to closure of tricuspid and bicuspid valves. The second sound is dub. Okay, your heart beats like lub dub lub dub lub dub. And please listen to your heart sounds with the help of a stethoscope if you can get access to one. You will definitely appreciate it. These two sounds are very beautifully heard on the stethoscope, and in addition to this, you know, we hear many other sounds as well, but these are not for importance for now. These are of clinical importance, right? We as doctors, we learn to differentiate between different heart sounds. Some of the heart sounds are heard only in some specific diseases. You have to remember only the two normal heart sounds, which are lub and dub, right? Your heart beats like lub dub lub dub lub dub. It's like that. So what is, you know, what causes dub? Just like the closure of, you know, the tricuspid and bicuspid valve due to contraction of ventricles, what will happen now? Now the blood has been pushed into your aorta and pulmonary veins. Now the phase of ventricle diastole will come, and when the phase of ventricle diastole will come, ventricles will start to relax, and because of relaxation of ventricles, what will happen? The pressure in ventricles will go down. So now the blood which has been pushed into aorta and pulmonary artery, these will try to tend to come back, right? Now these will be stopped by which valves? Pulmonary and aortic valves, right? Pulmonary and aortic valves. So second heart sound is because this is called as the second heart sound, and second heart sound is made because of the closure of, please write down, it is because of the closure of pulmonary and aortic valves, right? I forgot to tell you one more thing, that the pulmonary and aortic valves are also called as the semilunar valves. Semilunar valves. Okay, these are also called as the semilunar valves. Okay, aortic and pulmonary valves. Okay. Now for understanding all these concepts, you need to have a strong command of cardiac cycle. So if any one of you who has not understood cardiac cycle properly, please first go back to that video and then first study cardiac cycle and then come back to this video, right? So this was what was about the heart sounds and your stroke volume and everything. Okay, now let us move forward. Now one more thing, that there is one circulation which is called as coronary circulation, right? Coronary circulation. What do you mean by this? Now let me go back to your chapter structural organization, in which we studied different types of muscles. What did you study in that? That there are three types of muscles in your body, right? You know that there are three kinds of muscles in your body. Now these three muscles, out of what are these three muscles? Skeletal muscles, cardiac muscles and smooth muscles, right? Now you know that skeletal muscles can respire aerobically as well as anaerobically, right? But cardiac muscles and smooth muscles, these only respire aerobically, right? These only respire aerobically. And since, now let us talk about cardiac fibers, right? Cardiac muscle fibers. Now since cardiac muscles can only respire aerobically, and you know heart is one of the main organ of your body, right? What is cardiac muscle? Cardiac muscles are those muscle fibers which are found only in heart. That means if I am saying cardiac muscle fibers, that means I am talking about heart, right? So why is this heart very important? Because this is responsible for pumping of oxygen of blood to whole of your body. If this itself is not, this itself will, you know, will not get enough oxygen, will it be able to pump blood to your whole of your body? No, right? So first of all, you need to complete the oxygen demand of your heart, because your heart can only respire aerobically. which cannot respire anaerobically, right? So first thing, whenever you are getting oxygen, whenever the oxygenated blood is coming from your lungs to your heart, first you need your heart to supply your heart, so that your heart can supply your blood to all the other parts of your body, right? You need to first supply the heart, right? So what are those vessels which supply the heart itself is called as, they are called as coronary artery and veins. What are they called as? They are called as coronary artery and veins. So what are coronary artery and veins? Coronary artery and veins are those blood vessels which supply and drain blood from the heart, right? Arteries which will supply the blood, and veins which will take away the blood, right? So these originate from aorta itself, right? The first part of aorta is called as arch of aorta. Now look into this, है ना? जब भी आपका left ventricle, now you know that left ventricle is responsible for pumping blood into whole into the aorta, and aorta takes it to whole of your body. Now there are various parts of aorta, you don't need to know all of them, but you need to know about the first one, which is arch of aorta. You know, when the aorta comes out of your heart, it makes an arch like this, right? It makes an arch like this. That is why that part of aorta is called as the arch of aorta. Now there are many branches of arch of aorta, but the first branch of arch of aorta is coronary artery, right? Is coronary artery. Okay, so what is the first artery which is originating from your aorta? That is your coronary artery. And what is the function of coronary artery? Coronary artery will supply the heart. It will supply the heart, so that heart is always functioning. ठीक है, तो अब आप इससे एक अप्लाइड करिए ना, हम लोग क्लिनिकल भी पढ़ते जाएंगे, बिकॉज कई साल से मैं देख रही हूँ नीट का क्वेश्चंस बहुत इजी आ रहा है. तो अब नीट का क्वेश्चंस अगर थोड़ा भी टफ करना होगा ना, तो दे विल स्टार्ट asking applied questions. So use your brain and think, what will happen if this coronary artery gets blocked somehow, right? It can happen. I told you that if coagulation pathway starts all of a sudden without any reason, what will happen? That will block your blood vessels. So think that if this coronary artery gets blocked, what will happen? Oxygen will not reach your heart. Will your heart will now be able to pump blood? No. And that is what is called as heart failure, right? When your heart is not able to pump enough amount of blood, that is what is called as heart failure. Now we will study about those things later on in the chapter. So this, for now you remember that coronary circulation. What is coronary circulation? Coronary circulation is that circulation which is responsible for supplying the heart and taking away blood from the heart, right? Your coronary veins, these originate and again drain into your heart itself. ठीक है, तो heart से ही निकलता है, heart को ही supply करता है. That's it. Okay, so this was about coronary circulation. Now one thing which I forgot to tell you in the anatomy of heart is that just like lungs, right? Those who must have studied respiratory system by me, they must know that your lungs are enclosed in a sac-like structure. I told you that, imagine that there is a balloon, filled with air, somewhat filled with air, not fully, and we insert something like this, right? This is a balloon and we insert something like this. So there will be two layers of balloon, right? One which will be covering the lungs, ekdam closely, and another, outer layer. So outer layer is the parietal pleura and the inner layer is the visceral pleura, hai na? I told you this about. And what is pleura? Pleura is the covering of your lungs. Just like that, heart is also enclosed in this, and the covering of heart is called as pericardium. What is it called as? Pericardium. ठीक है, pericardium. Peri मतलब around and cardium मतलब heart. It has also got visceral layer and parietal layer. ठीक है, that's it about it. Now the next which you have to know is your difference between arteries and veins. We are coming to the end of the chapter. I hope you understood everything, right? So difference between arteries and veins. First thing, अब तो आप बताइएगा, what must be the first definition of artery and vein? So you will have to say that, ma'am, arteries are those blood vessels which take blood away from the heart, and veins are those blood vessels which carry blood towards the heart. I hope there is no confusion in this, right? Second, now you can say that generally arteries carry oxygenated blood and veins carry deoxygenated blood, except my pulmonary artery and pulmonary veins, which carry oxygenated, deoxygenated respectively, right? Now next, okay. Now what are arteries and veins made up of? The wall of artery and veins are made up of three layers. Okay, the wall of arteries and veins are made up of three layers. Okay, they are made up of three layers. ठीक है. The first is the outermost layer which is called as tunica externa. ठीक है, you can look into your NCERT as well. Tunica externa. ठीक है, tunica externa. Tunica externa is the outermost layer which is the fibrous layer, right? This is the fibrous layer. Now next is tunica media. The middle layer is called as tunica media. The middle layer is called as tunica media. ठीक है, what is tunica media made up of? Tunica media is made up of muscles, smooth muscles. ठीक है, smooth muscles. ठीक है, they need to maintain a pressure, right? So कहीं पे भी आपके बॉडी में प्रेशर चाहिए या मूवमेंट चाहिए, always and always muscles will be responsible for that. ठीक है, so to maintain that pressure, what is tunica media made up of? Tunica media is made up of smooth muscles, and the innermost layer is called as your tunica intima. ठीक है, this is called as your tunica intima. Tunica intima. ठीक है, now this tunica intima, this is composed of two things. First, connective tissue, right? Connective tissue is ubiquitous. I told you in structural organization in animals, right, that connective tissue is everywhere, right? It is responsible for linking and functioning of various tissues. So connective tissue is present everywhere. Now this connective tissue, it is made up of connective tissue plus endothelium. Right? Please recall what is endothelium. Endothelium was the innermost layer of your blood vessels, right? When I taught you about structural organization in animals, I told you that the innermost layer of your blood vessels is lined by squamous epithelium, and that squamous epithelium is what is called as endothelium. Now, people who did not understand what I said just now, please go back to the lecture of structural organization in animals and revise that. Okay, so what is endothelium? Endothelium is the innermost layer, innermost squamous epithelial layer of your blood vessels, right? Now these three layers are present both in your arteries and veins. These three layers are present in both your arteries and veins. But what is the difference between these? Now understand that I told you that the pressure in arteries are very high. Right, I told you that the pressure in arteries are very high. So whenever arteries are carrying, why is it high? Because heart is pumping blood into arteries with a great force, and because of that, if the walls of artery will be thin, don't you think it will burst under that pressure, right? The pressure in your arteries, the systolic, now I told you that there are two types of blood pressure. I explained you that in cardiac cycle, right? When there is a ventricular systole, the ventricles are pumping blood into the arteries, and at that time the pressure is 120 millimeters of mercury, and that is a very high pressure. So to endure that very high pressure, the walls of arteries must be thick. The walls of arteries must be thick. And which layer do you think will provide the strength to arteries? Which layer will be that? That will definitely be the muscular layer. I told you, wherever your strength is required, wherever your movement is required, it is because of muscles, right? Why are you able to lift heavy weights? Because of your muscles, right? The more developed your muscles will be, the more weight or force it will be able to bear, right? So because of this high pressure, so the next difference between artery and veins will be that arteries have very high pressure as ventricles are pumping blood into the arteries, and in veins you will write that the pressure in veins is very low, right? It is so low that there may be backflow of blood. We'll come on to that, right? So because of this high pressure, what happens is the muscle layer of artery is very thick, right? You can even see in your NCERT, the muscle layer of your artery is very thick. Look into the diagram number figure number 18.4 of your NCERT, right? The muscle layer of your artery is the one which is shown by green. That is what is your smooth muscle layer, right? That is very thick in your arteries. And what will happen in veins? Since veins don't have a very high pressure, their muscle layer is comparatively thinner. ठीक है, सो आपका नेक्स्ट डिफरेंस क्या हो जाएगा? ट्यूनिका मीडिया इज वेरी थिक इन आर्टरीज, ट्यूनिका मीडिया इज थिनर इन वेन्स. ठीक है, इसके चलते क्या होगा? आप सोचिए, इतना मोटा ब्लड वेसल्स है, इतना मोटा इसका वॉल ही हो गया ना, बिकॉज द वॉल इज वेरी थिक. व्हाट विल हैपन टू द ल्यूमेन? द ल्यूमेन मीन्स द स्पेस इनसाइड द पाइप, राइट? दिस ल्यूमेन विल गेट स्मॉलर. सो नाउ बिकॉज ऑफ थिक वॉल, what will arteries have? Arteries will have a small lumen, right? Arteries have a small lumen, and veins, because the walls of veins are very thin, not very thin, but they are thin compared to arteries. Because of this, the lumen of veins are thinner, bigger, right? Veins have thick lumens, right? Veins have thick lumens. Now, because of this low pressure, what will happen? Blood will tend to backflow in veins, right? Blood will tend to backflow in veins, but there are no chances of backflow in arteries because of high pressure. Because of high pressure, there are no chances of backflow of blood in arteries, right? And to prevent this backflow, what is present in veins? So you will write down that valves are present in veins and valves are absent in arteries, right? We completed so many differences. Now let us come on to more differences. Right? Think that what is more precious to you, oxygenated blood or deoxygenated blood? So obviously oxygen carrying blood will be more important to you. So because of that, arteries are well protected in your body, right? Arteries are well protected in your body and they run deep inside your body, right? They always run deep inside your body. But veins are superficial, right? Veins are superficial, you can see them through skin, right? बोलते हैं ना यहाँ पे vein दिख रहा है ना, नस दिख रहा है. Actually that is not nerve, that is not nus. The blue thing which you see is your vein, right? Is your vein flowing. So please write down, arteries are deep seated, DEEPSEATED. That means they run deep in your body. And veins are superficial, right? Veins are superficial. Superficial मतलब ऊपर ऊपर होते हैं, superficial. Okay, so is there any other thing which we are forgetting to discuss? Right, yes. Now because of the pump, huge pressure in arteries, you are able to feel the pulse in your arteries, right? You must have had a doctor check pulse of in your wrist, right? What is that pulse? That is because when your heart is pumping the blood from your ventricles, you are able to feel it in your arteries. There are some places in your body where arteries become superficial, right? There are some places in your body where arteries become superficial. So this wrist is one of the place where your radial artery, right, becomes superficial. Okay, so when you are going to palpate, when you are going to palpate your palpate here, you are going to feel your pulse. So this pulse is always felt in your arteries and not in your veins, right? Pulse is always felt in artery and not in your veins, right? You can also feel your carotid pulse. Yeah, there are many places where you can feel your pulse, right? That's it. These were the main differences between artery and veins. I hope you don't have any problem in this, right? The rest of the diseases I will discuss it in the next video.